the back talking, but I think we should probably get going. Yes, sir.
Pardon, Monsieur le Président, ça veut dire que le son a été certifié par les interprètes, exact? OK, merci.
What was the request?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The interpreter said yes to it, and I said yes.
Okay. So we're good with the Thank you to our interpreters for working so hard. Before I officially call the meeting to order, I'm just going to say that just really quickly, we are going to, so everything is fine with the interpreters, and we're going to proceed, and we'll proceed as planned. We'll follow the normal plan. So if you did send a message out to any of the folks saying get here early, you might want to give them an update. So, okay, I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 7 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to standing orders. Members are in attendance in person in the room and remotely using Zoom application. Before we continue, I'd like to ask all participants to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. You'll also notice a QR code on the card, which links to a short awareness videos. Just a couple of comments. Please wait till you're recognized. For those on Zoom, you'll see at the bottom of the screen there's an appropriate channel for interpretation, either Floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the specific channel. And a reminder that all comments should go through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And today we are pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 18th, 2025. The committee is resuming its study of Government Regulatory Reform Initiative in Agriculture and Agri-Food. And I would now like to welcome our very patient guests. Thank you so much to our two guests, our witnesses that are joining us today. We have Anchor Peak Cattle Company and Diane Solly, who's the ranch manager by video conference, and East Point Cattle Corporation, and Erin Solly. She's the co-owner. I'm not sure if you're related, but it would be a pretty big coincidence if the same last name, so welcome. We appreciate it. And you have 5 minutes to present, and then after that, we'll open up for questions from members. So maybe we'll start with Diane. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Chair or committee members. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story. My name is Diane Solly, and along with my husband Cody, son Remington, and mom Ethel, operate Anchor Peak Cattle Company. Our family has been ranching in the foothills of Alberta since 1900. This is a summary of our time and resources allocated to the TB testing of our cattle herd. On July 11th, we were notified that our herd had been identified as a trace out from a TB case in Saskatchewan involving cattle we acquired in December of 2021. The CFIA subsequently assigned our case and initiated the necessary procedures. We completed the premise pre-interview producer questionnaire for bovine tuberculosis, enabling CFIA to gain a comprehensive understanding of our operation. This is a brief view of our operation. We manage 550 commercial cows. Our land is spread over multiple locations with challenging landscapes. The main ranch is 30 kilometers west of Nanton, Alberta. Our summer range pastures are located anywhere from 40 to 132 kilometers from the main ranch and range in size from 1,750 to 8,000 acres. The cows are in 5 different herds and summered in 5 separate locations. Following the completion of our questionnaire and interview with CFIA, we explained that testing most of our cattle in July would be extremely challenging, if not impossible. CFIA demonstrated flexibility concerning scheduling and agreed to test the herd in the fall when they would be all in one location. Normal operations could proceed. However, on July 21st, our caseworker informed us that due to the complexity of our operation and the presence of 2 commingled herds, both our cow herd and the associated commingled herds would be subject to quarantine. The official quarantine notice was issued July 24th. To mitigate a 4-month quarantine, we requested immediate testing begin and an operational plan and schedule was established. I would like to note that the manpower and hours required to gather the cattle were considerable, approximately 800 man-hours in total. But given the tight timelines, seasonal constraints, and the size and configuration of our fields, it was unavoidable. In addition to gathering and testing costs, several other expenses were incurred, including the loss of grazing range, disruption in breeding programs, abortions during testing, fuel, vehicle wear and tear, and missed marketing opportunities. With the current cattle market at historic highs, the inability to market cattle during quarantine has been particularly stressful. Testing began August 3rd and ended August 28th. In this time, we tested 5 separate herds in 4 different locations, amounting to 10 test days and multiple days of gathering. Policy and procedure over this time was inconsistent. 11 cows in total were depopulated from our herd. CFIA will compensate us for this loss, but this will be the only compensation we will receive. We also have been tasked with proving the value of the depopulated cows. My intent today is to detail the significant effort and resources dedicated to TB testing our herd. The planning and implementation required considerable time and attention. The entire testing process spanned an entire month, diverting essential focus from regular ranch operations and leading to missed business opportunities. While I recognize the necessity of maintaining a disease-free cattle industry for international trade, I believe it is inequitable for individual producers to bear the full burden of these requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today. And now I'll turn it over to Aaron Solly for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Aaron Solly, and I'm speaking to you today from our family ranch near Melville, Saskatchewan. Together with my husband Shane and our 3 young children, we operate East Point Cattle Corp. The past 12 months have been devastating. We went from managing a healthy herd of over 2,000 head of beef cattle and being named the 2024 Commercial Breeder of the Year by the Saskatchewan Simmental Association to having every single animal ordered destroyed by the CFIA in February 2025 due to a positive case of bovine tuberculosis. This event has drastically altered our lives, and it's set our business back by years, possibly even a decade. When the positive case was traced to our farm, we committed to full cooperation. Over the years, we have maintained detailed records and implemented a rigorous traceability system, not only to support our breeding program, but to contribute to the integrity of the industry. Canada's disease control system relies on producer participation to ensure food safety and maintain international market confidence. Yet producers are often left to navigate the federal system alone, facing rigid procedures, limited opportunities for discretion from CFIA staff, and an entirely insufficient level of communication. In our experience, the CFIA is not equipped to manage its own protocols effectively, and its policies lack the flexibility needed to respond to real-world challenges. We appreciated Minister MacDonald's recent amendment to increase compensation rates for animals ordered destroyed, but those values were nearly a decade out of date and they remain inflexible. If market prices continue to rise, as they may, given the shrinking North American beef herd, producers will again be forced to advocate for updates before compensation can begin. A simple, effective improvement would be to adopt an evergreen model like the Wildlife Predation Compensation Program under Saskatchewan Crop Insurance. For example, beef calf pricing is based on market data from the week before, during, and after the loss, with producers receiving the highest value. If prices fall below a set minimum, the minimum is paid. Other species are compensated using 6-month averages, and registered livestock and specialty animals are valued at 1.5 times the commercial rate. These common sense solutions would reduce administrative burden, save time and money for both producers and government, and eliminate the need to assess carcass quality long after the fact. Streamlining the process would also ease the mental health toll producers face during these crises. As a producer going through this process right now, it would be very difficult for us to advocate to other producers to follow the path that we have followed. At no step in the process have we been rewarded with any benefit for our wholesale compliance. It's been very difficult to watch the situation unfold in high-profile cases in other parts of the country and wonder if we should have behaved differently. As we said, we want to do the right thing, but when non-compliance offers a similar or even better outcome to the process, then the process is destined to fail. When the federal government leans this heavily on individual producers to take one for the team, while risking their operations, families, livelihoods, with little to no reassurances that they will be supported through the process, it undermines everything that process sets out to achieve. And so while I propose some simple minor improvements, unfortunately, I believe the entire framework requires a different approach. One that it can assure producers that if they participate fully in the process, that they will be made whole again, with an eye to returning to production as soon as possible. That is where the CFIA can truly achieve its joint mandate to safeguard the food system and maintain economic viability through market access and trade. I want to conclude by saying I hope you realize the opportunity you have before you to make real changes that affect everyday citizens during their darkest days, and I would hope that is something my government can do for our industry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for taking, those. Obviously, it's a huge challenge that has been presented to you. Thank you for sharing that with us, so we can learn for this study. I'll go to John Barlow from the Conservatives for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and certainly appreciate the patience of our witnesses in getting their technology figured out. I know you are.
It's not on.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to our witnesses. Certainly appreciate your comments and commitment to doing what is right for your operations. Certainly for many of us, BSE is still fresh in our minds, and the impact that had, especially in our neck of the woods. Diane would know that very well. Maybe, Aaron, you mentioned that there's a protocol or a program with the Wildlife Predation Compensation Program through SAS Crop Insurance. We've often fought to have a more timely and efficient process when it comes to compensation when producers are having to depopulate. Is that a method or a protocol that could easily be copied by the federal government to make this process easier on you as a producer?
Yes, I think something like that could very easily be implemented. Right now, through the compensation process, we're trying to value individual animals at a time when they weren't marketed. And really, through the whole compensation process, we, from day one, have no idea what we will be paid. We still don't know. We're 304 days in, and we have no idea what our compensation is going to look like. If producers had that sort of window of reliability to say, okay, we were depopulated here, here's our 3 weeks, and they could work, it would at least give a little bit of a framework for some idea of what compensation would look like.
In the last Parliament, we did a study on biosecurity preparedness, which also led to my own private member's bill on protecting biosecurity on farms. And one of the recommendations we had was, and I want to quote it here, review the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's compensation policy when the destruction of animals is ordered to include all cleaning, disinfection costs and associated costs with depopulation. As you said, because of a lot of work of the members of this committee to get the government to change the compensation model, but that doesn't include other extraneous costs, whether that's transportation, man hours, work, collecting cattle, as Diane had said. How important is it for you, as you mentioned, to be whole when you are having to depopulate 2,000, ahead of 2,000 animals that you have worked years to build the genetics of that operation?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So in the process, like you said, CFIA only compensates for animals ordered destroyed. And yeah, so for example, we were ordered destroyed February 18th, and the animals didn't leave our premise until March 31st. So we were expected to feed and care for 2,075 head for 40 days, all at our own expense, all at our own manpower, our own fuel, our own tractors, everything like that. And that's just one example, right? Like, you know, like Diane said, the days that it takes to gather cattle, the people that you need to help process them. And CFIA doesn't have the capabilities to do that, right? They need us to put them through the processing facilities. They need us to gather them. And then after the fact, after the depopulation, we spent the entirety of the summer, you know, cleaning and disinfecting, moving through that process, all with no compensation in sight, nothing from the CFIA.
Thank you. Diane, you mentioned in your testimony that you also it was unequitable for producers to bear the full financial consequences, and that, you know, CFIA needs to do things differently. We had the officials of CFIA here as part of this study a couple of weeks ago, and the current government has had it in their election platform and as a mandate that the CFIA adjust its own mandate to include food security and economic impact on its decision making. The officials from CFIA said, we do not need to change anything. Does that raise some concerns with you, considering the experience that you've had with CFIA, that despite maybe some government pressure, they are still not relenting or willing to change the way they do things?
Yeah, it is, because in our situation, which is not even close to similar to Aaron's, when we basically had to test our herd, the man hours that we put into that to be compliant, you know, so that we could have open borders, was like, it was unrealistic. And yeah, they don't really seem to care, as well as the fact that throughout, because we tested 5 different locations at 5 different times, their policies and procedures didn't follow. They were inconsistent. When we first started testing, fairly laxed. As our testing went through, got more, which really doesn't make any sense. But yeah, like, there has to be some kind of compensation for your time.
And what we've heard from a lot of folks that have dealt with this is the lack of knowledge on CFIA. Was that the lack of knowledge of your operation and how agriculture works? Is that a similar experience with you?
I'm just going to stop you there, just because the 6 minutes has been exhausted, but I'm sure you can answer that question in the next round. We'll go to MP Harrison for 6 minutes.
Before I say anything else, I'd like them to finish that line of questioning from Mr. Barlow.
Can you repeat the question again?
Oh, sorry. It was the question John Barlow had asked you, if you wanted to finish up the answer.
Yeah, can you just refresh?
John, do you want to
John,
repeat the question?
Yeah. Sure, sorry.
No, go. Yeah.
Thanks, Emma. Just the comments we've had from producers is the shocking lack of knowledge CFIA has on agricultural operations. Was that a similar experience, Diane, that you had with dealing with CFIA on your operation? Maybe Aaron, if Emma's willing to give you the chance to answer that too.
Yes, it was. They had no realization as to the difficulty that it would be for us to, in the middle of the summer, to actually go and retrieve those cattle, bring them, test them, hold them 72 hours, test them again, and then return them to the field that they were in. This is like a 3-day process, both directions. And that was, they were just clueless when it came to anything like that.
Thank you. So I'm a small-time cattle producer in Ontario. So first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry for that experience that you've been going through. It's truly unbelievable. I can't imagine losing your whole herd. So to that, to Aaron, it's okay if I call you Aaron just because of the last names. Would you be able to explain to the committee, when you talk about it's not just the loss of the 2,000 animals, but how that actually does pan out over the decades? Like, what, for people who don't understand how cattle work, could you explain why this is also a tremendous loss of decades of work from your farm and family?
Right. So, I mean, cattle herds are usually built over generations. Young people like ourselves enter the cattle industry, and, you maybe buy a few cows, maybe you buy some bred heifers, and from there, you carefully select which bulls you want to buy. And then from there, you select which bred heifers you want to keep to build your herd and to build the genetics and build the traits of your herd that you want to see for years to come. And that's how you build, that's how you build a quality herd, and it's how you build an operation that runs smoothly. You don't keep animals that are of poor quality, that can't calve on their own. And so that takes years to come to a herd of our quality, and then it's gone. And it can't be replaced. So that's been, part of the challenge with CFIA is they want to put a value on these cattle and on this herd as an individual animal, but yet they don't recognize the years that it takes to, have animals of this quality, of this nature, and build this herd. They think that we should just be able to go out and buy new ones.
I can tell you that I appreciate that fully. I could only afford, when I took over my family's farm, I had to restart it because my dad had passed. And so the farm had sat vacant for a pretty long time, so we could only afford to buy a few head of bred heifers. And now I have my favorite line of cattle. Her name's Mabel, and I would be devastated to lose her. But she's only ever had heifers, calves, so I love her even more for that. I guess to either of you who feels comfortable answering is, did you feel initially that you had the information up front of how this process would go and what was expected of you? And do you feel that, I guess, did you have enough information and was it clear to you what the expectations were and how things would go for you?
Do you want to, I can go to that one, Diane, if you want. That's a big no. We were very much left sort of putting the pieces together as it went along. And information was, I think, had we not asked the questions that we asked and been as involved as we were, we wouldn't have even known a lot of the things that we learned through the investigation. Things were brought up sort of piecemeal, and as things happened, different decisions were made. And there was no real roadmap ever laid out in front of us. We sort of just had to take things as they came and try to navigate it through our associations and through talking directly to the CFIA.
I'd like to give you an opportunity just to follow up just on some of from your personal experience, what you would like to see going forward. I know you've touched on a lot of points, but I'd like you the opportunity to speak further to modifications that could be made so that farmers do still feel that they would like to come forward to report.
Oof, I don't even know where to start on that one. There's a lot of challenges that came about. I think right off the hop, not knowing how you'll be compensated is a big piece. You find out that you're going to lose your entire herd all your animals are going to die. They're going to be depopulated. And for 300 days, we still, to this day, have no idea what we will be paid for those animals, if we will be made whole, and if we will be able to continue. And so that's a big piece to having people be compliant in these situations. When you don't know those things, how do you want to participate?
Certainly. Well, first of all, it'd be, really helpful to us if you could submit any ideas that would help. I know it's probably very, very lengthy, but anything you could submit to help us, to help move this forward would be great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perron, 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Ms. Nairn, Madam Aaron, I would like to hear some of your suggestions, and I will pick up on where you left off. You said you don't know how much you will be compensated, even after 300 days. We understand that this must be a frighteningly anxiety-inducing situation. Microphone. How come this situation is occurring? Is the CFIA communicating with you? Are they taking your considerations seriously? What do they say when you speak with them?
So I think that part of the length of the compensation process was due to the pressure we needed to apply in the beginning to have the regulation change of the compensation cap that was very outdated. So that definitely was added a length of time. But we started the compensation process, and then we actually learned that it's a little bit tricky to explain, but the compensation process begins and you submit. We ultimately have to prove what our animals are worth. And so that does take a considerable amount of time to try and, like we spoke of before, prove that animals that we've developed genetics in over years, to try and prove their value to us. And so it's been a lot of back and forth of trying to establish that. The team that is looking after the compensation, after they realized the scope of our project, which the scope was known from day one, how many had we had, they realized now, quite a few days in, that they needed to outsource to an outside evaluation company. So that added another month or so to the process. And so it's just been, they do communicate that they are working on it, but ultimately there's been no communication to give us any idea what the outcome will be.
Est-ce que là ça m'embête ce que vous me dites?
I find this very troublesome. You're saying that after a certain amount of time, you realized that you could not proceed with the evaluation with the CFIA specialists, and instead an external company was recruited to do this evaluation. And it seems that what you're saying is that while your case is being reviewed, you get the impression that maybe it's actually been put on ice, and that sometimes, they'll give you a call to make you think that they're really working on making things progress. But are they really doing that? Because 300 days is actually quite surreal.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a long time to be up in the air as to whether you're going to be able to continue on with your business. It's been a really lengthy process. And they actually, a real challenging piece of this too is now they've hired outside evaluation, but this outside evaluation has not seen these cattle. They're gone, and they were never looked at beforehand. So how do you establish quality and things like that from pieces of data?
Est-ce que c'est une question de ressources?
Do you think that it's a question of resources, a lack of resources, or is it more of a question of working culture or a question of willingness?
I can't speak to what that would be. I think that they did not understand the scope, which I mean, like I said, they knew the scope of our operation from the very beginning. And so it was surprising when all of a sudden they said, wow, this is a big file. We're going to, need some help on this. And yeah, so I think that maybe it is just a lack of resources. They're looking to people internally in CFIA that have very little cattle knowledge or knowledge of the cattle industry. I'm glad that they did essentially decide to outsource, but I think ultimately they were trying to work through the file and then decided this is way too large. We still are going back and forth on the actual number of cattle. They've come back to us with a number that is missing 150 head. So, there's some pieces like that are just a little bit unbelievable, to say the least.
Okay, I'm going to, if that's okay, I'll move to the next speaker. We'll go to the next round for 5 minutes each. 5 minutes for the first two. We'll start with Mr. Bonk.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming today. As a cattle rancher not far from Erin's place, I can feel her pain. I can't imagine having to go through this. You talked about taking years to build up genetics. It doesn't take years. It takes decades and generations on farms. And one thing you'd mentioned is about it's 300 days now since this happened. And basically you have all the expense of running an operation without any of the revenue. That's not just compensation for the time that you spent on this file, depopulating your herd and sanitizing. But can you maybe talk to the committee a little bit about the toll that this is taking, trying to manage cash flow on an operation of this size, not knowing if you can repopulate this year, not knowing what the compensation will be? Can you just maybe talk a little bit about that so we can get some background?
Right. So like I said, right from the very beginning, we were unsure of what the compensation rates would look like. And so, payments don't go away. And, you can't just start liquidating things. So we were offered interim payment from the CFIA, which they will give you a third of what the projected value of your herd is, which is fine. And that can keep you going. But ultimately, it doesn't let you start to rebuild because you just simply don't know what you can spend on new animals. Are we going to be able to rebuild at 50% or 60%? So, they'll argue that they've allowed us to move forward with our business, but that's just not true. How can you make business decisions when you have no idea where you're going to come out at?
Maybe could you just talk a little bit about the actual process itself? So when you were going through this, did the CFIA, did they have clear procedures, methods that they had to follow? Was there a lot of discretion that was given to the CFIA for them to interpret the rules, or were the regulations fairly clear?
I would say no. I think there was a lot of decisions that were made sort of on the fly, so to speak. We would ask certain questions to our case officer, and we might not receive an answer for a week because it had to go from that case officer to a specific planning group and then back to us. And so it lengthened the process, and you actually weren't sure which planning group was going to make that decision. And so, yeah, so you kind of got conflicting information sometimes from different groups making different decisions.
If I could ask one thing, could you give us as a committee some very specific recommendations of how you think that this process could be made more predictable, simpler, more equitable to producers, and easier to follow? Because as you mentioned, and I want to thank you so much for your compliance, because we have a very strong reputation for a high-quality product and high biosecurity and phytosanitary standards, and thank you for upholding that. But if you had any specific recommendations for this committee, what would they be?
I think that confidence in the process is key to making producers be compliant, for making them want to participate in the process. When we share our experience with other producers, it's full of difficulties and, CFIAs, I don't like to use the word incompetence, but like lack of knowledge of the cattle industry, of the beef industry. And so that just doesn't instill confidence in producers that the process is being done correctly and that it's being done in the best interest of everyone.
Yeah, I'll maybe join with Ms. Harrison, who asked for specific recommendations that you could provide to the committee. If you could provide those to us in writing for the future, that would be very helpful, I think. This because we need producers to have confidence in the system where they will comply, where they will protect the Canadian industry, and just keep our reputation intact as a quality source for genetics across the world, and also our beef. So I just wanted to also mention a little bit about the Saskatchewan crop insurance protocol and the pricing formula that they have, and I'm quite familiar with it. And it's basically just a rolling average of the cattle prices in your area for a week prior, week during, and the week after. And I think that is something that would be very easy for our government to implement. And I was just wondering if you had any further comment on that.
I'm going to ask you to hold there. I'm going to go to the next speaker, and maybe we can answer that either through a submission or in the next round. To MP Dan Duran.
Merci beaucoup, et bien franchement.
Thank you. And in all honesty, this situation that you're going through is very sad. I can't imagine how what you're going through is so difficult, and it is not even over yet. It takes so much time to bounce back from this kind of thing when you've got cattle at hand. I'll allow you to answer my colleague Mr. Bonk's question, please.
Sorry, Mr. Bonk, you said about the wildlife predation claim and whether a system like that would be beneficial.
Exactly. If you could mention about how it would just give some predictability, in my estimation, of how we could get a fair and, I guess, easier way to track the true value of animals.
Yeah, it would certainly give some predictability to, right from the beginning when you're identified as being involved in one of these investigations, you at least can have, an idea of where you're going to come out at, instead of waiting with no idea of what's going on. It at least is going to, I think there would have to be some flexibility for, you don't market certain animals at certain times of year. I think there would have to be a little bit of flexibility for that, but it would certainly give people an idea of where they are going to come out at. And it's based on current market data, not simply on caps that have been set years previous.
Merci. Et dans votre témoignage,
Thank you. In your opening remarks, I heard you talk about issues with being compensated appropriately and with communication. If I turn to what was more positive, what I understand is that the agency did sometimes, according to your needs, allow you to change the dates. So things were not working during the summer, so the requests were made in the fall, for example. So there seems to have been some flexibility on the agency's part. Do you have any recommendations with regards to procedure or communication in order for things to be even more streamlined with the agency?
I think Diane could maybe speak more to that one because we weren't given very much flexibility at all because we were Diane could speak more to that because they were able to.
So when we first met with CFIA, they indicated that yes, we could test our herd in the fall because of the fact of where they were at. But then they came back and said, actually, no, we're going to quarantine you. So it would have meant that our herd would have been under quarantine from July 24th until sometime in October when we tested. So for that whole period of time, we were under quarantine. So at that point, we said, no, we want to test our herd now because we want to mitigate the length of the quarantine so that we could market our cattle. So, I mean, they were flexible in changing the dates, but the consistency in their messaging is not good. And also the fact of that every time you ask your caseworker a question, they have to go back to the team. And we were told on several occasions that every case is on a case-by-case basis. So there is no consistency, there's no framework as to how this is going to operate. We had 2 commingled herds, so that means other producers that we had our cattle mixed with. One of these was on the Waldron Grazing Co-op, which is the largest grazing co-op in Canada, open grasslands. Could have affected 74 different operations should we have been determined we had TB, and they could not give us proper protocol for biosecurity. They just would always tell us it's on a case-by-case basis. Until something happens, we can't determine what that will be.
Mais, très rapidement, puisqu'il reste 25
Very quickly, since we only have 25 seconds left, can you talk about the collaboration with the provinces? Are they involved at all in helping you?
In Alberta, our ABP they've been good to help us with regard just in between us and CFIA, but with regard to actual producer support, it's all just mouth. Like we're not getting any support through our producer groups other than communication.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Perron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout d'abord.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Madam Erin Solly, I did not have enough time earlier to wish you good luck for what's to come. We are obviously we're obviously thinking of you, and same for you, Madam Diane Solly. And you did mention, Ms. Solly, Ms. Diane, that the CFIA officials did not seem to have any independence. We have noticed this in multiple departments. They don't seem to have any leeway, and they really have to do things by the book. And if they don't want that, then they have to go to a higher up, and it takes many months to get a response. Did I understand that that's the situation that you're going through?
Yes, that would be correct. That your caseworker that you deal with is just an in-between, and it goes to the top, and then it's a waiting game from there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'd have to add that it's especially frustrating when you get maybe put into a call with the epidemiology planning group, and what they're telling you is different. What they would have done would have been different from what you're hearing from a different planning group that manages a different part of the operation.
C'est d'une tristesse épouvantable. Donc,
that is unspeakably sad. any recommendations, Ms. Diane Solly, please submit them in writing so that we can maybe change things, perhaps better training, more independence to the caseworkers who actually do the evaluations. And Ms. Diane Solly, do you think that there's a serious lack of resources that is causing these delays at the CFIA, or do you think that there's inefficiency and working culture that's at fault here?
My guess would be that it is more an inefficiency in working culture than lack of resources, because when they sent their crew out to do the testing, they had more than enough people.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go to our final, I would say about three, we'll do 3 minutes each, if that's okay. Mr. Barlow?
Thanks, Chair. And I really appreciate, again, the frank responses from our witnesses, and certainly understanding the importance of doing everything you can to follow the protocol and protecting our disease-free status in Canada. But I think what's excruciatingly frustrating here is the fact that there doesn't seem to be any lessons learned. You know, we had the bovine TB outbreak in Alberta in 2016, where we lost almost 12,000 head of cattle as a result of that. And Aaron and Diane, you're both saying that there seems to be an incredible lack of knowledge of CFIA on how to deal with this, and lack of communication. So it doesn't seem like they learned anything from the outbreak in 2016 to put together a framework or even amend the Health of Animals Act to have that compensation portion changed. And another example is the recommendation we had from the biosecurity report, that the response from the government to that recommendation to change the compensation to include cleanup and disinfecting and other costs, the response from the government at that time was, well, producers should use agri-stability and private insurance. Do those cover or even accessible to an issue like this that you're dealing with? Maybe Diane and Aaron, just take a second to, can you access private insurance or agri-stability to cover your costs?
In my knowledge, private insurance is not would not be an option, and I am not aware that ag stability would be as either.
Yeah, I agree. We actually had our cattle insured, and we went through the motions to make a claim for to have some of the costs covered, and diseases is not covered in any way, shape, or form. Same with agri-stability. We're working right now to see how that program may help us, but it's not looking great.
Yeah, again, frustrating when the government is recommending programs to cover your costs that you don't even qualify for. So it's just an incredible lack of knowledge or dismissiveness by the government to offer these programs. And I guess just lastly, can you talk about the impact this has had on your mental health as you've tried to go through this? And certainly, it's one thing to depopulate a herd that you've worked years to build, but to have 300 days of just not knowing where you are, as our goal is to make sure we grow the cattle herd in Canada, not lose young ranchers and entrepreneurs and business owners. What has the impact been on you and your family, Aaron?
20 seconds.
We have young children, and I don't know if they'll want to continue on. It's been very trying. It's been a lot of uncertainties to have to handle for that many days.
Okay, we'll go to our last speaker in this round, MP Chattel, 3 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses for speaking to us about this very important issue that is part of this study. And this study aims to bring solutions at a time where we are reviewing the CFIA's processes as well as the PMRA's processes. Your experience is very helpful. Thank you a lot, and I'd like to echo my colleagues' feelings. We are thinking of you during these difficult challenges. So thank you for taking the time to share all this with us. Many producers have mentioned that delays are one of the biggest issues in the industry, especially with regards to compensation, and you have confirmed that. There's also the caps that are bothersome. There's also these elite herds, and it's quite important when the value is actually above the cap mentioned in the regulations. I think it's worse in the United States from what I've understood. They are compensated even less. There's another issue that I am hearing here. There's the emotional impact and the feeling of being, in limbo, especially being alone in that situation. I'd like to hear your thoughts on solutions. That's really what we're aiming to find. We want solutions to these problems. What you've gone through can actually help us improve the system. I've come across various models. The state of Michigan has a closer relationship with the federal government in order to get compensation, and this is also happening in Europe, in the Netherlands. So the federal agency actually compensates farmers for the loss of a herd. There are a lot of things that are connected to that. For example, rebuilding and getting a new herd. So you must get rid of a herd, but then you also have to build up your herd again, and that requires a lot of investment. My colleague talked about a program called Agri-Stability. We're going to be reviewing these programs, and we'd like to hear your recommendations. My question is the following. Perhaps you can submit it in writing. What are your recommendations where we could marry the federal compensation with a risk management program like Agri-Stability in order to better support farming?
Thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you to our witnesses for joining us here today. I think I can say on behalf of all of us in the room here, we really appreciate the fact that you've shared your stories with us, and we look forward to getting any further submissions that you feel would help us in this study. We appreciate your time, and I personally wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll suspend for 5 minutes. Thank you. Again, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Just make a few comments before we start. Please wait till I recognize you. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation. And a reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. We are continuing pursuant to Standing Order 1082, a motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 18th. The committee is resuming the study of government regulatory reform initiatives in agriculture and agri-food. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. From the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, Mr. Lee, welcome. From the Ontario Tender Fruit Growers, Phil Trigano, and from Prince Edward Island Potato Board, Greg McDonald. I'll give each person 5 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the Standing Committee. I'm here today on behalf of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, a sector that contributes significantly to Canada's food security, export competitiveness, and rural economies. Our growers are committed to producing safe, high-quality food while upholding Canada's reputation as a trusted trading partner. We support the government's goal of modernizing regulatory frameworks to ensure they remain effective, efficient, and responsive. At the same time, we believe reforms can be expedited in ways that reduce unnecessary costs to producers without compromising health, safety, or trade integrity. Modernization of food safety, areas where reforms can be expedited. Streamlined approval processes for crop protection tools. Expedite PMRA reviews, review of low-risk and reduced-risk pest management products, particularly biological and integrated pest management. Solutions align timelines with trading partners such as the U.S. and EU to prevent competitive disadvantages. Modernization of food safety and inspection protocols. CFIA would expand the use of digital platforms for documentation, traceability, and compliance reporting, reducing paper-based redundancies. Due to shortages of adequately trained inspectors, the CFIA has demonstrated inconsistent oversight practices that either disproportionately impact greenhouse operations or fail to provide the necessary resources to support fair and effective inspections. Opportunities to reduce costs without compromising health or trade. Risk-based regulatory oversight. Shift from one-size-fit-all compliance to risk-based models, focusing resources on higher risk activities while easing the burden on operations with strong compliance histories. International harmonization. Reduce costs associated with retesting or recertifying products already approved by trusted international regulators. Pursue mutual recognition agreements to minimize duplicative regulatory requirements for exports, and develop a North American perimeter strategy that aligns with our key trading partner to protect food security and the investment made in farming. Simplified reporting and record keeping, consolidate overlapping reporting obligations into a single standardized platform accessible to both CFIA and PMRA. Provide clear guidance and templates to reduce administrative costs for growers. Cost recovery and fee structures. Review cost recovery models to ensure fees charged to growers are proportionate to the actual regulatory service provided. Consider exemptions or reduced fees for small and medium-sized operations adopting sustainable practices. Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers generates more than $1.8 billion annually, forming a substantial share of the $5.3 billion that greenhouse vegetable contributes to the Canadian economy. Serving both domestic and export markets, the sector sustains over 35,000 jobs across the full value chain. Regulatory delays or duplications increase input costs, reduce competitiveness, and slows the adoption of sustainable practices. Streamlined science-based reforms will allow growers to access safer, more efficient pest management tools, reduce administrative overhead, maintain Canada's reputation for food safety and trade reliability. In conclusion, Ontario greenhouse vegetable growers are committed partners in advancing Canada's regulatory reform agenda. We believe that by expediting approvals, reducing duplicative costs, and modernizing oversight, the government can strengthen both the competitiveness and sustainability of our sector while continuing to safeguard public health and international trade standards. We urge CFIA and PMRA to prioritize reforms that deliver measurable efficiencies for producers, ensuring that Canada's agri-food system remains resilient, innovative, and globally competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Greg Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Prince Edward Island potato industry. PEI is proud to be a national leader producing over 20% of Canada's potatoes. Our industry contributes more than $1.5 billion to the island's economy and support thousands of jobs. I'm not here to ask for lower standards, but for smarter, more efficient regulation, regulation that protects health and safety, and I think we all agree on the importance of that, while also supporting competitiveness, innovation, and trade. And I'd like to make three key points here today. One is CFIA and PMRA must adopt a more business and trade-oriented mindset. These agencies play essential roles in safeguarding Canadian agriculture, but their current approach is overly cautious, slow-moving, and disconnected from industry realities. We need a cultural shift to change this. We must also ensure our producers aren't placed at a competitive disadvantage compared to imported food. Some examples. CFIA should act not just as an enforcer, not seen by producers as a barrier to trade, but as a partner in trade with timely certifications, consistent policies, and science-based decisions. There needs to be a food lens applied, considering how regulatory decisions affect producers and supply chains. We need to ensure Canadians that we do have a good supply of affordable and quality food. The sector should not be the one constantly adjusting to bureaucracy. It's time for the system to adapt to the sector. Similarly, PMRA's approach must move faster on improving tools like drones and crop protection products already used in comparable countries. Delays limit competitiveness and stall innovation. Both agencies must embed economic impact and business practicality into regulatory decisions, not as an afterthought, but as a core responsibility. The second main point I'd like to make today is the opportunity to reduce or cut costs and red tape without compromising safety or trade. Producers face redundant, overlapping, and outdated regulatory requirements that increase costs without improving outcomes. There's multiple food safety audits covering the same things, exports shipments subject to repeated inspections, continued use of outdated inspection methods like hand grading potatoes for inspections when automated technologies are available. Our packers use them like optical sorters and cameras and in-field tests that can be used by inspectors 24/7 and entirely remotely. The third key point I'd like to make today is political leadership is needed on stalled and long-standing issues. Some regulatory issues simply can't be solved through process improvements alone. They require political direction to move forward. The 2021 U.S. market closure to PEI fresh and seed potatoes is a really good example. Despite science being on our side and risk controls in place, trade was halted, causing millions in losses and lasting damage to our seed trade. The situation exposed a critical flaw. Scientific risk assessments mean little if not backed by strong political leadership. We need our leaders to defend science-based trade decisions and push for resolution when agencies alone can't. So in conclusion, our message is simple. We support strong regulation, but strong doesn't have to mean slow, burdensome, or disconnected from business reality. We urge this committee to recommend reforms, again, for those three things: more business and trade-oriented mindset with the agencies; 2, streamline and harmonize compliance requirements; and 3, to use political leadership to resolve stalled and long-standing issues when science alone isn't enough. The PI potato industry is ready to be part of the solution, and we are committed to safe, high-quality food and strengthening Canada's global leadership in agriculture. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Mr. Trugano online. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for the opportunity to discuss some of the issues that tender fruit growers have. As growers, our main focus is import replacement. And as a farmer along the Niagara River, having the tools in place to compete against our competitors on a timely basis is very important to our success. You know, an example of CFIA and some of the problems that we've had with it, a small item like nectarines. In 2020, we requested an update on the labeling and grading requirements on nectarines. We still haven't seen it yet, even though all the stakeholders have been put in input in that. Now, we are assured that that's happening in very short term, and we certainly hope that it's moving that way. It's just one example of how slow things can be with the CFIA. We also part of our import replacement is, of course, getting new varieties into the country and that. Right now, if you want to get a new variety into this country to compete with some of our people across the border, it has to be sent to the CFIA for 3 years, checked with whatever system that they're using right now. Then it goes, once it's cleaned, if it's clean after 3 years, then it's sent to a nursery, which takes another 2 years to get enough product at least to supply our growers. And then our growers have to grow it for 4 years. There is technology that's being used now, whether it's next generation sequencing or anything else like that. Technology that, you know, the medical community has been using for years that can tell you whether it has a virus right away. And we could speed up that whole process and be in the marketplace a lot faster than certainly the 7 years that it would minimum take, or 9 or 10 or whatever it's going to be. We're also hampered by the plumppox virus, which we dealt with in Niagara for quite a long time. Some of this testing and that could certainly be used in that area, so we can get budwood out of the area and it's clean, and then we can do it outside the area, or product that comes into the area and stored and then goes out can certainly be changed, and we can go for a later date than some of the requirements that they're making us do now, where they're asking for it to be completely dormant and then shipped out of the area. Just a lot of rules that are outdated and you know, that just need to get brought up to the new system. On PMRA, you know, we have the same problems. We're a minor use crop. They don't seem to have enough people there or big enough budget to process a lot of the new chemicals that we can use in our operation. We're losing some, and you know, as a result, that we have to apply for emergency registrations and that, which is a very poor way of doing things, because of course, if it's an emergency, it's already happened, and it's you know, you're reacting to a problem that's already there instead of being proactive. So PMRA needs to be worked through again. It needs to develop a positive way of dealing with new chemicals, possibly taking technology and taking into consideration that the chemicals used in other jurisdictions and using some of that information so we can update the chemical uses for some of these minor crops that we're growing. So basically, that's some of the concerns that we have as the industry, and I find that basically at CFIA the problem is it's a technology thing, and that they need to update, and whether it's a bureaucracy item or something like that that's stopping them from doing that, but some of these new technologies and rapid testing and that is something that they need to move to. So I'll look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Mr. Barlow.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to our witnesses who are here. Appreciate that. I guess I'm going to start with Mr. Donald of the PI potatoes, and I want to touch on a comment that you made during your opening remarks saying, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but if we have the scientific information to back it up, it means nothing if there's no political will to enforce that change. We've certainly heard that the CFIA's unwillingness to change its mandate to include, focus on food security and economic impact. And certainly I don't think if there's an industry in Canada like the PI seed potato industry that has felt the brunt of that with the issue that happened in 2021. I just want to ask you, the Liberal government actually brought in an international advisory panel to look at if there was an infestation of potato wart on PEI. What was the findings of that government-appointed advisory panel when they looked at PEI and the wart issue on PEI?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Yes. So that report that you're referring to was an expert panel was brought in with various scientific expertise from around the world that were very familiar with that particular plant health disease. And their findings were, in general, is a very lengthy report. There was a lot of recommendations, but we know that issue is there. But it was relatively localized and under control, and they gave many recommendations, and among them were that to focus on the areas where the problem is, obviously, and there didn't need to be the intensity in areas where it isn't. And similarly, in potatoes, we have a quarantinable area in Saint-Namab, Quebec, and another one in central Saanich in BC. And I think in the U.S., there's many states that have quarantinable potato pests. So, but at the end of the day, it's we have the scientific ability, and we've been doing that to manage plant or animal health issues, and at the same time to maintain and continue to grow our business. So, in essence, and if I recall, the advisory panel said PEI potato wart is low risk. Has that, despite the scientific research done by that advisory panel and their lengthy report that was released, has a ministerial order banning the export of PEI seed potatoes, has that been lifted? Despite that report and having many efforts, we have the safest potatoes, in my opinion, in the world. No, it has yet to be lifted. What is the impact that ministerial order last 4 years now, almost to the date, I think, we're getting pretty close. Mm-hmm. What has the economic impact of that ministerial order been on the seed potato industry on PEI? Can you put a financial number on that? Yes, it's, and I have to say, relatively speaking, our farm cash receipts now are about $400 million for the entire industry. It's a relatively small portion annually, our exports that were lost represent $6 million. And but since that issue, it's 4 years, it's $24 million, and I might add the year before that it's over $30 million. But I can't emphasize enough the importance. That segment of our industry is literally the foundation of our entire industry. Without good seed growers and seed production, we don't have a table industry or a processing sector. So the dollar figure as a percentage is smaller, but I can't overemphasize how important it is.
Is there, much of a seed potato industry now in PEI, 4 years in, or what is the outlook if this ministerial order remains in place?
So the majority of our seed potatoes prior to this and currently are used right on PEI.
Right.
So the industry is still strong, and that's important to the industry. But I might add that individual producers, this particular plant health issue, they wouldn't want to spread it in their own farm or to their neighbor. And I can't, again, overemphasize all the multiple layers of mitigation and things that have been put in place. And but this issue has been on PI for 2.5 decades. And in my opinion, what happened in 21, it was already under control and managed, and it really did not need to happen. Nor does that ministerial order impacting seed need to be in place today.
So I have two quick questions. I only have 30 seconds left, so I'm just going to give them both at the same time. In your opinion, your expert opinion, is PEI infested with potato wart? Second, is there any commitment by the current government to compensate PEI seed potato growers for the loss of an international market?
So absolutely not is it infested, and I know our industry, our growers, our island has taken great offense to that reference. It's in a very small geographic area, and it's been under official control, and like I said, all the testing, it's the safest place in the world. And as far as compensating our seed growers, despite indications that would be addressed by the minister at the time, there has been no compensation for seed growers.
Stop you there, sir. 6 minutes to the Liberals. MP Chatel.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here this afternoon. This study is very important. We're looking for very precise solutions, ones that are structural. We'd like to have a bit more flexibility, and we'd like to get rid of a lot of the irritants that we're hearing about. Some solutions have emerged from the ideas that have been presented to the committee. And Mr. Lee first, then Mr. Trigano, I'd like to have your opinions. Some of the irritants are already listed, produced by an organization, and some of the recommendations have been institutionalized in order to give more decision-making capacity to the industry, and that should give this roundtable more flexibility to make recommendations as well. Another recommendation is to find the products that have been certified or registered in countries that have standards similar to Canada, for example, New Zealand or Australia. And so these products would be implicitly good, and we would accept them for use in Canada until the agency would have enough time to complete their studies on these products. Another solution was to have an ombudsman's office. The agency has some claims for their services. They created an institution which is internationally renowned. It is an ombudsman's institution. The ombudsman is a completely impartial party. 95% of their recommendations are followed and accepted and adopted. These are recommendations that don't require additional funds or legislative or regulatory changes. It's more about the delivery of services, and there are a lot of complaints with regards to the services. Another suggestion that has come up is to involve the industry in the decision-making process. One of the ideas was to involve agencies such as the PMRA, or to rather move the PMRA to the Department of Agriculture, rather. I'd like to hear you, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Trudeau. Your thoughts.
Thank you for that question. So you hit on a couple key points there. When we talk about PMRA approvals and timelines and adopting approvals that our key trading partners, similar to the U.S. or EU, have already cleared or pre-approved some of these registrations. EU probably has one of the most stringent approval processes that Canada, instead of redoing that review and implementing that review once again, could adopt strategies to harmonize those approvals with those key countries. As it relates to the Bundsman recommendation, I think that would be an excellent recommendation, fully supported. We have a situation where there's no formal resolution process, no formal complaint process with a CFIA inspector, other than challenging that inspector face-to-face and going to their manager. That puts us in a very precarious position. You have a situation where officers have discretion, and discretion can be a very valuable tool, but in the same vein could be a very detrimental tool to sectors. When you have two officers allocated to the same area, and I'm sorry, I should be saying inspectors, allocated to the same region and have two different interpretations on the Safe Food for Canadian regulations, we have a challenge. We have an unfair competitive gain over one grower compared to the other. So greater oversight on those on the CFIA local offices and having a formal resolution process would be welcoming additions and recommendations.
Merci beaucoup. Et Monsieur Trigo.
Thank you. And Mr. Trigano, on to you. If you don't have enough time to share your thoughts, please submit them in writing to the committee.
No, it'd be great. I'm also, down in Niagara, of course, I'm a grape grower also, in addition to growing tree fruit. They're using next generation sequencing. The grape industry has also had an issue with different viruses in grape plants as they bring them in from France and different other countries. So they are using that already to make sure that they're getting clean nursery stock. And if we adapt it also to trees, we'd have the same effect. So it's just a matter of someone in the CFIA of making those changes and doing that. And I agree completely with Richard also that, there's many jurisdictions across the world that are reviewing these different chemicals and that for minor use and that in a smaller industry like ourselves. And, I think those same reports, if they're adjusted and used in Canada, would be.
We're about 25 seconds over. I have to stop you, sir. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to go to Mr. Perron for 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I'll start with you, Mr. Donald. Something bothered me in your opening remarks. You said two big things. 2021, you said you didn't need that ministerial decision or from the department. I'd like you to expand on that. Also, you said that your compensation, this compensation promised to you, and it's been 4 years and you still haven't received anything.
Thank you for the question, Chair. In my opening statement, I was stressing the importance of not only to have a good science, sound science, and with our, in this case, CFIA, our regulator, to help us manage plant health issues. Just to be clear, what I was saying was that it's also important that we have combined with that strong political leadership to for our industry. So that's what I was referring to. I believe the subsequent to the plant health issue, because of a challenge from our main trading partner, at that time, the federal minister imposed a minister order that prevented the shipment of all PEI potatoes. So that, in my opinion, didn't demonstrate the confidence in our own regulator that was tasked with that job. So we needed to have the confidence in our regulator, just like we do with our main trading partner in the U.S. with USDA APHIS, that, like I said, have many states with many quarantinable pests. Their product comes into our country. We trust their regulator and their government. And on the compensation, specifically to our seed producers, there's compensation for for fields that were directly involved, and also for the disposal. We disposed of enough potatoes that would fill the Rogers Center in a day. When we have concerns about food security, etc., we destroyed a lot of potatoes. There's funding to help pay for hauling those potatoes to the field and putting them through a snowblower. There is no additional compensation. And for our seed growers, they did not. They have not. They to this day, they're not allowed to sell seed off of PEI, and per the previous question, they've received no compensation for that whatsoever, and that was done to protect the Canadian seed industry.
L'industrie de la semence.
The seed industry, well, in 2021, you say they had absolutely no support. Does it still exist?
So I'm sorry, could you restate the question?
Vous parlez de...
You speak of the seed industry, which received no compensation whatsoever, if I understood what you said correctly. It's 2025. That was in 2021. Does that industry still exist? What can they do without having any revenue whatsoever for 4 years? Are they working locally? What's going on?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So they still produce seed that can remain on PEI for island producers. They cannot sell seed off of Prince Edward Island to the rest of Canada.
Okay.
So, and,
Merci. Mais on vous avait promis compensation.
Thank you. But you were promised compensation, correct? It just never arrived?
Yes. It was indicated in early days that that would be looked at and addressed. Yes.
Ouais. Ça, quand il y a un ministre qui nous dit qu'il va...
When a minister says they'll look into it, we shouldn't take it too seriously. Mr. Lee, on to you. In your opening remarks, you made many specific recommendations. I imagine that you submitted that in writing to the committee. There were very many good recommendations that I think we should look into. One of them was expediting things. But, Mr. Lee, how do we expedite the assessments without increasing risks in an unreasonable way? We, of course, it's easy for us to complain, but we're not scientists. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. You have about a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I mean, one example is that alignment with our key trading partners I had illustrated earlier, where pest risk assessments have been completed already. Ultimately, another option is low-risk groups, a low-risk approval process for integrated pest management, an option to be able to implement something that doesn't take 6 to 7 years to approve, or costly, relying on government to provide information. where registrants aren't able or not willing to provide the information or funds to support those studies. When you look at emergency use registrations, as my friend has mentioned, it is just that, an emergency after the fact. We need to be modernized and thinking forward and aligning our efforts and programs with our key trading partners that have already gone through these processes and are aimed at protecting their production base and enhancing that trade.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have about 14 minutes left. I know that there was a, Mr. Perron asked if we could talk a bit about one of the studies in the future, so maybe we can carve out 3-4 minutes at the end to talk about the grocery code of conduct. Is that right? So if we have 10 minutes, maybe we can do, we'll do 4 and 2, and then stop there and then have that conversation at the end. Is that fine with folks? Okay, so Mr. Barlow, we're going to Mr. Epp. Okay, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'll ask to keep your answers short as I have limited time. Mr. Lee, you mentioned the lack of process to address concerns with decisions from CFIA inspectors. Were you aware that there was an officer, a redress officer, under the Harper government, and that office was closed shortly after 2015?
I am aware of it. It's one of our advocacy points to implement the resources necessary to address some of these issues. And again, as I'd indicate, that discretion of those officers is a very dangerous tool if misused.
Thank you. Mr. Trigano raised the concern that it's taken so long to get sizing standards in for nectarines. I understand that the cucumbers have gone through a similar process. There's been some recent gazetting. How long did that process take?
At best recollection, a minimum of 4 years to make a regulatory amendment that had little to no support by the CFIA, instead of assisting and enabling industry to make the proper process. All they were providing the sector was how it couldn't be done, as opposed to how it could be done. So after 4 years, happy to see that it has been published in the Gazette, along with overly prescriptive labeling requirements for cucumbers. When you look at a long English cucumber, ranges from 10 to 14 inches, 3/4 of that cucumber would have had to be covered with labeling.
Thank you. Several years ago, my office engaged with yours. We tried to engage with CFIA to proactively develop protocols in the case that we had an infestation or something come into the country to rapidly respond to it. We couldn't even get the CFIA to engage with our meetings. You mentioned in your opening comments about a North American perimeter. Why is that so important?
We export 85% of our produce to the United States, about $1.7 billion. As you can appreciate with these trade irritants that we're seeing, a North American perimeter strategy would help protect our production base and our investments. U.S. is quick to protect from any type of invasive species. An example is Mediterranean fruit flies on peppers. Once the U.S. was identified on the product, they banned any imports. Canada was not willing to do so. They stood by their pest risk assessments. They failed to modernize. They claim climate change, but they indicate that our harsh winters here in Canada, the pests would not be able to sustain.
How cold does it get in the greenhouse in February?
We have year-round production.
Thank you. So that was facetious. I know a number of greenhouse operators in our area, my area, our area, have operations on both sides of the border. They are actively moving their organics production to the U.S. because of a lack of harmonization, and then looking to market those organic products back into Canada. Why?
Very difficult to grow to that U.S. standard. You have a national organics board that you have to meet that certification, additional red tape hurdles, trying to get that equivalency so that our growers can compete globally has been an ongoing challenge.
Thank you. How many audits does the CFI impose upon the greenhouse sector, roughly, a year?
My average farm will face and be subjected anywhere from 8 to 15 audits.
Can that be streamlined?
Absolutely. You have ESDC, you have federal, you got provincial, municipal, redundancies, no common denominators, and the redundancy red tape is extremely cost prohibitive and creates
Thank you. I'm going to get one more question. Mr. Taguno, plum pox, the 2014 order was just repealed. 2025 was put in on a smaller area, but why is there still a plum?
Yeah, we're unsure why there still is. It's really redundant now.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're going to go for 4 minutes to the Liberals. Mr. Connors.
Yes, Mr. Donald, I got to say that Kent McDonald wanted to be here today, and he had planned on being here. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, so he wanted to say hello. I want to talk about, you mentioned drones again, and that's been brought up a number of times during our consultations. How would that impact the industry from an economic perspective, if possible? And what do you see as the reasoning behind it taking so long for it to be approved?
There's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be approved. We bring food in every day from the U.S. that technology is used, for example. As far as what it means to the industry, it's an opportunity to save money, use less crop protectants or pesticides in the event of if a field's too wet, or if they want to do, they can scout the field with a smaller drone and then send in a larger drone to spot apply. That it's way more practical than using a ground rig. And ultimately, it's a way to grow more affordable, better quality food and better for the environment.
I'm going to ask you a bit of a broad question here now. So we talked about the potato wart and everything, and your organization's been around for a long time. In your opinion, how has the regulatory red tape and burden changed over the years? And do you think the role of regulation has changed over the years as well?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The way I've been around for a long time too, and the way I have to answer that is those agencies, in particular CFIA, years ago, the inspectors, which were the interface with the producer, came from a farm. So they had both a farm and business background. So it was inherent upon them, or with them, that it was important to them both the farm, producing food, as well as the rules. They followed the rules. As those folks have left, or retired, or whatever reason, they had the people that are there today. All that institutional knowledge is gone. And they have good people. They have good inspectors. We have good inspectors. But until it needs to come from leadership now. It has to come from a clear mandate that it's to manage our plant and health animal issues, but also we have to maintain and grow the business too. And it has to cascade all the way down to those inspectors, that there's objectives and KPIs that that's an important part of what they do. And we don't need enforcers, we need partners.
Mr. Lee, I see you nodding your head. So would you like to be able to answer that question as well, or give us some input on that question as well?
Well, when we talk about regulators, you have overzealous inspectors that take it upon themselves to make decisions that impact business, their investment, and their financial comfort levels. I'll tell you that I have inspectors indicating that we are the federal regulator, and what we say will go. We have discretion and decisions made that a complete barrier, structural barrier, construction requiring permits, has to be erected from a bathroom inside a packing house that is greater than 30 feet away because there was a potential of food safety risk. So when you have that type of discretion and you want to challenge it, your fear of reprisal is a situation that is a very delicate one that you have to navigate through.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I just, if you have anything else to add to that, can you submit it in writing into the gentleman online? If could you do the same thing?
Happy to do so.
Thank you. Okay, 2.5 minutes, Mr. Perron.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lee, what you just said really struck me. Earlier, we were talking about officials who, during inspections, during a crisis, don't seem to act independently. They always have to turn towards their superior for a decision. You're saying that there's one inspector that might be more, overzealous than the other one. How do you explain these kinds of changing attitudes?
I see the lack of training, lack of knowledge of that sector, lack of willingness to learn more about that sector. Safe Food for Canadian license, we have a very unique situation. So I go back to there's not a one-size-fit-all solution. We license growers, packers, and marketers. You need to have that license to undergo that activity. Growers are subjected, based on one officer's interpretation, to maintain a Safe Food for Canadians license, even though they don't know where that product's going. It has to go through a licensed marketer who will determine whether it stays within the province or is shipped outside. That inspector's supervisor agrees with me. So where is that consistency? Where is that willingness to work together and seek the consultation of all industries so that you get it right?
Merci. En quelques secondes.
Thank you. And just in just a few seconds, if you can tell us, what would it change for your industry if there were electronic labeling, on cucumbers and so on? Can you share your thoughts? And Mr. Donald, if you have a chance to say something as well.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. It wasn't
L'étiquetage
the electronic labeling, the ePhyto labeling.
Yeah, most of our members do have electronic labeling in place. Problem is the prescriptiveness of the need to list your farm, the country of organization, the actual address on this cucumber was one of the prohibitive recommendations that was made by CFIA and adopted. And when you implement a soft enforcement of a regulation that's passed federally, what message does that send? There's no confidence in the sector. There's no confidence in your regulatory authority if they decide that they're not going to enforce those standards. And that has been ongoing for greater than 4 years. A soft enforcement of a federal regulation instead of making it right the first time.
Merci.
Thank you.
I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our witnesses for being here today, online and in person, and we thank you for the work you're doing to build this country. So thank you so much. And you can stay or you can leave. It's up to you. We're going to just do a little bit of business here. Mr. Perron, you said that you had a proposal for the actual committee.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll remember, members of the committee, we adopted a motion on the code of conduct to invite witnesses to see where they're at in the implementation process. In the motion, we said that we should do it at the opportune moment. I believe that the opportune moment has come. I suggest that after the parliamentary break week next week, we start that study. I believe we had said we'd do 2 studies on it, and afterwards we could see if we need any more. But I think that we should start soon, and I'd like to hear my colleagues on that. Then we can start sending invitations to the witnesses.
Does anyone want to speak to that? MP Chatel?
Oui, et donc ça serait...
Right, so it would be when we get back from the parliamentary break week. Will we do one first meeting, and then the second meeting will be maybe in November at a different opportune moment? Or do you want to have those 2 meetings just as we get back? the real answer is that the first meeting will tell us that. But I do think that we should have them at the same time in the same week. Microphone. We want to make sure that we prioritize the study so we can move on. And we did say that we might do up to 8 studies on that. I'm not sure that we actually came to an agreement on that, but I do think we'd said that.
Yep, go.
Wow, merci.
I'd like to know, microphone.
Déjà, ouais, hop. Est-ce que des témoins ont
Have some witnesses already been scheduled for that study?
Est-ce qu'une date, donc oui.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Donc les témoins pour.
So there are witnesses for the study.
Sorry, so when I speak, see, it's still on right now, and then I can't hear the translation, so it's got to. Sorry, I couldn't hear what you were saying. I apologize, because the mic's on and it lowers the volume drastically, so go ahead again.
OK. Oui, ce que j'aimerais.
So here's what I'd like to know. Have the witnesses been scheduled already? And if so, on what date do we have the most witnesses for this study?
Pour l'étude actuelle,
For the current study, at least 3 witnesses answered and will be here on October 20th. So October 20th on this study, and the minister confirmed for October 23rd. So for the study on the grocery store code of conduct, would it be possible to hold a meeting on Monday the 27th of October, or is the 20th more preferable? I believe the 20th is preferable. I feel that we have a lot of time until then, but I think that on the 20th, it would be opportune to tell them that we're still interested in the progress of this issue. And so we will meet for the first time on the 20th, and then we'll decide on the second meeting afterwards.
Yeah, I guess that gives us some time to move those witnesses from the 20th. I always hate to do that if they've committed to that. And we have the minister on the 23rd. I don't think the grocery code of conduct is going to collapse if we wait until the 27th to have that meeting. So the 27th, the Monday and Thursday, as we had, a few of us had mentioned, we also want to do a one meeting look at the spent fowl issue. We've seen a stark increase in the number of the amount of spent fowl crossing the border into Canada. I know a number of us have had some conversations with Chicken Farmers of Canada. They've raised that issue. They just want one meeting with officials to discuss that. So I guess my suggestion would be one of 2 things. Is if we are okay with moving those witnesses on the 23rd, we kind of pause this current, or 20th. So we pause this current study we're doing for a few weeks. We would have the grocery code of conduct first meeting on the 20th, see where we're at in terms of how many meetings we would need. We'll have the minister on the 27th. 20th. Jeez, Murphy. I don't know if it's morning, day.
It's Thursday. You're in a blur. It's all good.
Thank you. And then rather than, I hate to kind of be juggling back and forth from studies to study. I know we've done it in the past, but I think if we just pause this one that we're doing right now, we'll pick up with the grocery code of conduct on the 20th, have the minister, and then that following week continue on with the grocery code of conduct if we need it, or we can look at a date for the spent fowl if everyone is okay with that. But it sounds like we're going to need more than one meeting for the grocery code of conduct, from what I'm hearing from my colleagues. So my suggestion, pause this one that we're doing right now until we deal with the grocery code of conduct, and I would like to see one meeting on the spent fowl.
Just a reminder that the minister's here for 1 hour of the 2, so there is an opportunity on the 23rd to take the other hour to use that other hour for anything we want. MP Dandaran?
Oui, merci. En fait, je suis d'accord avec ce qui est en train.
I agree with what's been said. We do have some very important studies, including on spent fowl, that are coming up. I do think the grocery store code of conduct is important to take a look at because it'll be implemented in January. I think that it's important for us to tackle any upcoming issues as soon as possible. So October 20th, Monday, October 20th would be a good day to start so that it gives us enough time for another meeting if that's necessary. The minister and the spent fowl, I think the spent fowl study is a bit less complex. I understand that it's important, but I think that we can address it and then later see what we have coming ahead. But I think the code of conduct on the 20th with the minister and then the spent fowl is the way to go.
Oui, je pense qu'on est tous d'accord.
I think we all agree, but I do have a good recommendation. The second hour of the minister's study, we can have the second hour for the witnesses for the grocery store code of conduct. So the 23rd would be the minister, and then we'll have the grocery store code of conduct during the second hour. And then we'll see if we need another study on the code of conduct. And then we do the spent fowl study. So if I look at the dates.
Full day, 23rd, the minister, and the other half would be the code of conduct. No? Okay, you go ahead.
Donc, le 20, au retour, 2 heures sur...
So the 20th, when we get back, 2 hours on the grocery store code of conduct. 23rd, first hour with the minister. Second hour, the 3 witnesses of this current study that the clerk had already scheduled for the 20th. So we move them from by just a few days. That allows us to pause this study or to finish this study with the witnesses that we have already invited. On the 27th, we'd have the spent fowl study or the code of conduct. We'll see when we get there. And on the 29th, either we restart this study or we move on to the spent fowl study, depending on how many studies we've used up for the grocery store code of conduct, 2 or less.
We'll go to Mr. Epp and then Mr. Penneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement that we need to look at the spent fowl. I have no issues with that scheduling that's being discussed. However, I will share with the committee that I'm already having many entreaties from the industry on the grocery code of conduct that 2 meetings will not be enough. So I'm not trying to preempt the other things, but I'm getting that feedback that that this committee needs to hear more.
How many meetings would you suggest then, just so?
I guess I wasn't here for the initial. My understanding, the initial discussions were up to 8. I'm not sure that we would need all of 8, but yeah. More than 2.
Mr. Perreault?
Ben, je suis d'accord avec.
I agree with Mr. Epp. In fact, we have to start with the 2 meetings that we had already wanted, and the committee has always been very flexible and able to compromise. I do agree with what Sophie suggested. Out of respect for the witnesses, let's push them back, their appearance back by a couple of days if John agrees. But it is important that we start the study on spent fowl because that is an emergency, or rather urgent. So we can alternate those 2 if John, my friend, agrees with that.
Do you have an understanding of where we are, though? Okay. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I guess my only suggestion would be, depending on who these 3 witnesses are, if they've booked travel or are they kind of Ottawa-based, then I don't think it's a big deal to move them. I would just say, I'm going to get my dates right now. Looking at the calendar, I would just say let's push off the current study that we're doing right now until November. That gives us the 20th, the 27th, and the 30th to deal with the grocery code of conduct if needed that much time. And then at that point, we look at spent fowl if we can get the 1 meeting in on that, and then continue up with this one at that point. So that would give us the 20th, an hour on the 23rd, the 27th, and the 30th to deal with the grocery code.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Yep.
Juste pour clarifier.
I'd just like to clarify, John. On the 23rd, the second hour would not be for the witnesses of this current study. Is that right? It would be for... I do have a slight preference, and here's why. There are witnesses who, for example, the person from Capi, who is going to be here and who can give us testimony. I think it's a time-sensitive study because, as we know, the government is currently working on a reform and a reduction of red tape. So if we can, round things off with those witnesses, that would allow us to have had a lot of witness testimonies. And so my preference is for us to just finish this study. However, if they're not available, yes, we can have the second hour for the code of conduct. My preference would be to have the second hour on the 23rd with the 3 witnesses that had been scheduled on the 27th. And then we can put this study on ice until the 2 issues that are urgent are addressed.
Thoughts?
It's not a hill I'm not worried about. I'm just these 3 witnesses. Are they the last witnesses that we're going to have as part of this study? So I know you have a time sensitive, but it's not that time sensitive. If we're not going to look at the report. We're not going to look at the first draft or any of that until November. So I don't know why these 3 witnesses have to be on the 23rd. I don't know why that's so time sensitive, that if we push those 3 back and we just pick up the study and carry on like we were going to, I don't know why making sure we have them that first week would matter one way or another. But maybe I'm missing something.
Non, je pense que...
I think what's important is for us to make progress and for us to stop at a logical point. We will have other witnesses, but I think that there are solutions that are emerging, and indeed we will be waiting for the report, and only these opening remarks and so on can help us with that work.
Helps. There are 20 more witnesses for this study available, that are on the queue to be. So we have 20 more. So it kind of, obviously it'd be great to move through 3, but I mean, we're not finishing this study anytime soon. We've got a lot more folks in the line. So it's up to you. What's the will of the committee?
Moi, un ou l'autre, Monsieur le Président.
Either or in the previous recommendations, that's fine by me. However, what John mentioned earlier, Sophie, is that the witnesses might be people who have planned, to travel here, or maybe they're from Ottawa. We don't know. Maybe we'll call them and they'll say, well, I can't move my date. So perhaps we could ask the clerk to see with the witnesses if they're amenable to coming here on the 23rd or the 27th, and we'll see what works best for them. With regards to spent fowl, we can talk about it on the 23rd or 27th. I mean, it's 4 days apart. I don't know that it'll make that big of a difference. And we can go ahead with the preferences of the witnesses, and I think that'll settle the issue.
Is that a fair proposal? Yeah.
Oui, absolument. Si jamais...
Yes, that is fair. If ever they're not available or one of the 3 is not available, I'd like to confirm. So the witnesses from the Code of Conduct who will be invited in their stead. So we will start on the 20th with the Code of Conduct. The 23rd, we will continue with the Code of Conduct in the second hour. Potentially another hour on the 27th. And the 30th, we will continue with the Code of Conduct, or rather with the spent fowl.
Mr. Perron?
Ouais, en fait,
maybe I'll let John speak up to that, but I think that the spent fowl is quite urgent. I'm not, against alternating those 2 studies because they're both urgent. John, when would you like to start looking at the spent fowl? On the 27th or on the 23rd. But let's not wait till we've finished the grocery store code of conduct. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, I'm fine either way. Like, yeah, whenever we can get those witnesses organized, because now we'll have to give a list of witnesses to the clerk for grocery code of conduct. I would assume by on Monday. I'll leave that with you. We'll do the spent fowl one's very easy. That's officials and Chicken Farmers of Canada and maybe processors. So whenever the clerk is able to get those witnesses scheduled, I think we will just go with what he is able to get these people in.
Right. So, okay, so would you tell the committee what you've heard, just so we're all on the same page at the end? Yeah. What you're going to do.
When we decide, you figure it out.
Yeah.
I believe what was said is on. I can check with the witnesses, the one that already accepted to appear on the 20th for the current study, if they are available to appear, to postpone their appearance at a later date, 2 weeks after, on November. If there's no issue with that, then on the 20th, 23rd, 27th, and 30th, we undertake the study on the code of conduct.
Is that okay so far?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then the you go ahead, and then I'll go to Sophie.
If we can get the witnesses, the officials, and Chicken Farmers of Canada and processors in a day in there, we just need one meeting for them at either the 20. Let's just start with that on the 20th and the 23rd, and we'll figure out the.
And we'll adjust at that date.
Adjust at that time.
So the agreement is when we come back, the next 4 meetings will be on this issue. Agreed? Yeah. Now, okay. Yes, there was one little piece to that, the current study.
The 23rd does not change.
No.
Yeah.
On the return, just to make sure, on the 20th, the return is the code of conduct, correct?
Yes.
Okay. On the 23rd, it's the minister, plus now it's changed. I thought it would be the 3
witnesses, if
witnesses.
possible.
If possible, if
and
not.
And then if not, code of conduct. That's, yeah.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Then we move to the second week. We have 2 days, 27 and 30th. So the 27th is the code of conduct again, and the 30th is the merci.
Yeah. And spent fowl will be agreed upon when we get back, right? We'll finalize that. Okay. Mr. Perron?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je veux juste...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that we've understood everything correctly because things have been evolving quite a bit. Microphone. On the 20th, it's the grocery store code of conduct. Everyone agrees? The 23rd, the minister, and he's going to be here, so we can't move him around. He's going to be here in the first hour. If the witnesses are available, we'll do them in the second hour or on the 27th, those 3 witnesses that are TBD. If the witnesses are not available on the 23rd, we could also continue with the grocery store code of conduct because the spent fowl will take us a full session. On the 27th, we mentioned that there was an urgency. We will already have started the study on the grocery store code of conduct. This is a smart and collaborative space and committee, so we will see how things are going after 1 or 2 sessions on meetings on the code of conduct. But here's also what I suggest. I understand that the spent fowl issue is quite urgent. It's not because we didn't bring up this subject that we don't understand how urgent it is, but I think it's important that we start on the 27th. If everybody agrees, I think this is what we should do. And then on the 27th, when we receive the witnesses for the spent fowl study, we should also have the producers and processors before the officials for them to explain what the issue at hand is so that we have all the information in order to better question the people from the department, the officials. If we start with the officials, sometimes we won't have enough information and we won't be able to get to the bottom of things. If my colleagues agree, that's what I suggest.
Now, did you get that, sir? It sounds like the 20th and the 23rd. No, the 20th, when we get back, is going to be on groceries. The 23rd, the minister comes in for the first half. Second half, it will be the witnesses on the current study, if they're available. If not, we will go back to groceries. The following week, on the 27th, we are going to focus on the chicken issue, spent chicken, and then if that's possible. And what happens on the 30th?
That's enough.
We'll decide. Okay, we've got. Is there a consensus here? Yes. We don't need to move any motions if we all just agree? Okay. We'll just we're good? Okay.
I agree with Mr. Perron's comment that we have the officials' second hour on the spent fowl issue. I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone agrees? Can I adjourn the meeting? Yes.